So thank you so much for both being here tonight. We will be discussing issue 38 about participatory budgeting or people's budgeting. Um, Both of you are on the opposite sides of the spectrum on this. So if you guys could if you could introduce yourselves first, of course, and we're gonna get into the depth of your issues. You guys both will have some time to discuss your stance on the issue. And right after the discussion has concluded, everyone is available to send questions in the chat. I will also be monitoring the chat so that you can ask any questions that you would like. And we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, Molly, you have the floor.
Molly.
I have the floor. Thanks, Aaliyah. Hey, everybody, it's so nice to be with you. My name is Molly Martin. I am the lead organizer of Issue 38. I have been a member of the People's Budget Cleveland Coalition for the last 2 years. I also do a lot of work with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. We do a lot of street outreach for folks who are unsheltered in Cleveland, sleeping on the streets, and doing a lot of housing advocacy and organizing in the city, trying to fight for more housing justice in a city that has seen a lot of housing injustice. I've been a part of PB Cleve for the last 2 years, and we have fought very hard to try and create this thing called participatory budgeting in the city of Cleveland. Before I make my case, Aaliyah, am I just making an intro? Should I keep it brief and then we're going to give it over to our friend? Okay. I promise to do that. Okay, I'll just keep it to a minute. I'm the lead organizer of the campaign. I've worked with a really amazing group of people across Cleveland to get issue 38 on the ballot. We believe that we need a lot of creativity in the city of Cleveland, and we need to challenge power to create the sort of change that we need to see the sort of economic justice and a lot of the justice that we need to see in the city. I grew up on the west side of Cleveland. I live near the West Side Market now. My family is Lithuanian. My great-grandfather first came to Cleveland at East 55th and Euclid and lived in St. Clair Superior for 50 years. My white family received an interest-free mortgage from the Savings Loan Bank and moved to West Boulevard and kind of followed this tradition of white flight and this pattern of disinvestment from the city, which I, as a generation younger from my family, have been fighting back against and trying to find ways to create more justice in our city when a lot of policies have created a lot of injustice in Cleveland. And I think the people's budget is a way to bring people into political power and into the decision-making spaces that impact their lives and their community. And I'll pass it over to my friend Darrell to introduce himself before we get more into the issue. And I just appreciate all of you for taking the time on your Wednesday night to join us to learn more about the many issues that are on the ballot this November.
And thank you. Also, can you all hear me? All right, so I want to thank the members of Delta Sigma Theta and the members of Omega Psi Phi for having us here tonight and for organizing this issues forum. I was at the candidates forum last week, and I think that the work that you're doing to inform Clevelanders and the general public about the upcoming election or all of our elections is very important work. I support it, and I am happy to see this continue. I'm Daryl Torbert. I know many of you. I am in my daytime, I serve as the Director of Communications for Cleveland City Council. In my nighttime hours, I do whatever the members of council ask of me to try to help promote the work that's being done in the city of Cleveland. And when Councilwoman Turner asked me to be here tonight, I knew that I had to be here to make the argument about why council is against issue 38. Before I get into that, I feel the need to introduce myself to folks who don't know me. I am a graduate of Collinwood High School. I've lived in the Collinwood neighborhood my entire life, up until recently when my wife encouraged me, and when I say encouraged, I can say forced me to move to Shaker Heights. So I'm now a Shaker Heights resident, but I'm a Collinwood, my family's Collinwood through and through. I am there every day, every week, supporting them and the needs that they have as they're trying to build a better Cleveland for themselves and the people around them. I'm a graduate of John Carroll University, went from Collinwood High School to John Carroll to further my studies, became the first member of my family to graduate from college, using that as a tool to further myself and my family so that we could grow from poverty. That's what I'm here to do, and that's what I think a lot of Clevelanders are working to do moving forward. So with that introduction, let you know, members of City Council are against issue 38 because it removes accountability from the process. Not only does it remove accountability, but it creates a $14 million hole into the city's budget, which can cause reductions to police, fire, EMS, and the services that Clevelanders are relying on every day to have a thriving city. Cleveland City Council is definitely in favor of civic engagement, civic participation, but the members of council do not believe that this is the way that we can go to improve civic engagement across the city. We want to hear from people. We want their ideas, their suggestions for what we can do to make Cleveland a better place. And in the time that I've worked with council, which has been for about a year, I see every day that 17 members of council are working every day in their community, talking to residents, talking to business owners, talking to constituents about what they need to better themselves, better their communities, and better the city as a whole. I know that they're taking the feedback from those residents, from those constituents seriously, and enacting many of the requests and the ask of them to build a better Cleveland. I've been involved in politics for nearly 15 years or so. I worked for a political strategy organization based in Euclid that has worked on school issues in this city. I mean, I worked for an organization that passed the first operating increase in the Cleveland schools history. Well, in 15 years for the Cleveland schools. That was issue 107 back in 2012. As a graduate of Collinwood High School and as a family member of so many kids who go to our Cleveland schools, look, I believe that young people, I believe that folks who are recently graduated, I believe that people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, beyond, have a voice that should be heard. And I know that many of my council members, our mayor, and many of our unions feel the same way. With issue 38, I can tell you that council is united in their opposition to this. We had 4 members of council that initially were among the sponsors for a pilot project that was initiated or instituted, introduced in January, but they turned against the project when they felt like that they didn't have any say in the direction that the issue 38 folks were going. I know Mayor Bibb is an opponent of this. I know we've got the AFL-CIO, we've got AFSCME, we've got the North Shore AFL-CIO Federation of Labor, the Cleveland Building and Construction Trades Council, all united against this, in addition to unions representing the Cleveland Police Department, the Cleveland Fire Department, Cleveland EMS, because they are aware that with this issue, if it were to pass, it will cause a $14 million cut. And at this time, Cleveland advocated for an issue or for an income tax issue back in 2016. And I'm proud to say that I was part of that income tax issue, that we raised the income tax. I'm not proud to raise people's taxes, but I'm proud when we can use money to provide better safety and better services for Cleveland residents. And that issue 32 back in 2016, I worked with Council President Blaine Griffin before he was a member of Cleveland City Council to pass that across the city. And when that issue was passed in 2016, issue 32 was meant to bring better services, more safety, more resources to Clevelanders so that we could have a better Cleveland, so that we wouldn't have to borrow money or carry over money from year to year to provide the safety and services Clevelanders want. When that was voted on by Clevelanders in 2016, I am very confident that they did not see a process that could pop up that would require us to take $14 million and 2% of the city budget, hold it in escrow in a sense, and then determine how the funds will be used. Look, we're for civic engagement. We're for civic participation. Like, I believe that the work that Molly and the leaders of PB CLE have done, I commend them. And it's astounding work that they've done to get the signatures that they've got, to get the feedback and buy-in from some of the folks that have been out in the city. But I know by and large, the majority of the residents of Cleveland, they will be hurt by this initiative. And it's the reason why council, why the mayor, why so many unions are opposed to it.
You, and we're going to go back to Molly.
Oh, that was a great introduction. I want to be your friend. It's so wild the way that I don't even want to call it politics. The thing that's interesting about issues that are ballot related are people are being brought out to the polls to vote for themselves and to really go to the polls and to go around their family and friends and talk about the issues that impact them. It's not personal. The political is personal, and I could go on and on about like how interesting of an experience this has been for me to be in community and relationship with people who are for and against issue 38. And I think for me to be in any sort of space where I'm talking publicly about it, I have to really like get in my heart center in the space of conviction about why I think this is really important. And I think it's really important to show up about that. Um, and I appreciate what you just shared, and thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here. I think something that I've learned growing up and living in Cleveland is that there really is kind of this disconnect in the way that people feel represented, like through politicians and through representative government in Cleveland. Like Cleveland is one of the poorest cities in the country. We have 3 major league sports teams that have stadiums here. And one of the leading things that issue 38 talks about is that if we don't have money for streets, then how do we have money for stadiums? If we're going to pay off the Brown Stadium in 2028, and if issue 38 were to pass and it were to go into place by that same time period, how can we say that we don't have money for residents of Cleveland who know their neighborhoods and their needs best to decide how just a small sliver of the budget is spent in their neighborhoods? How can we say we don't have money for that, but we can say, okay, the Brown Stadium is paid off, but we'll issue capital debt and pay that off for 30 years to put a lid on the stadium? And so a lot of it's just about priorities, right? I think for a long time, people have felt really disenfranchised, that so much money has been poured into downtown investment. I live in Ohio City near the West Side Market. I'm very, very fortunate to spend $400 a month in rent, but I know a lot of people who live in Ohio City now are paying $1,800 a month in rent. And there are a lot of people asking questions, how come there's so much money poured into development in Detroit Shoreway, into Tremont, into Ohio City, into whatever the neighborhood is called now? People call where I live now Solo, and into downtown while the rest of the neighborhoods suffer. And I think something that's really important about issue 38 is that it's about asking questions. If we have money to give billionaires who profit off of these stadiums and off of developments money to continue making money there, when years and years of research has shown through economic development studies that stadium subsidies do not benefit the city residents. They don't. They represent the adjacent business owners, and they pad the profits of the billionaire families who own them. And we in the city of Cleveland in particular over the last 3 decades have chosen a structure that is nonprofit so that the billionaire owners of these stadiums do not have to pay property taxes that benefit CMSD students. A lot of this gets to the deep-rooted questions of who has the power to decide. Where in these decision-making circles do people have, some sort of pressure towards private interests to make decisions? And I think at the heart of it, when people say we don't have money to pay for the people's budget, which is to say that the residents of Cleveland shouldn't have a say in how their taxpayer dollars are spent. 1 in 5 people in Cleveland vote. 80% of people do not, which is to say that even if people are elected on city council, a lot of those members were initially appointed. The majority of them were not elected by the majority of Cleveland residents. And a lot of people feel a lot of very warranted mistrust towards these systems. So the question issue 38 is trying to ask is, how do we be proactive? How do we build systems of trust and democracy in a city where there isn't any? I have been extremely lucky over the last 2 years to work with leaders from the NAACP Cleveland, from Cleveland Votes and Erica Anthony, and organizations that are asking these hard questions every day from a civil rights and human rights perspective. How do we build the people power necessary for Cleveland to be a city that's making decisions economically for itself? And how do we try and grow democracy and grow a sense of self-determination in our neighborhoods so that people feel like they're in control of decisions that impact their lives? Issue 38 is about putting power into the hands of the people, and it's about being proactive about how we address mistrust in the city, how we create a culture of pro-democracy in a city where most people don't vote, in a state that is gerrymandered intentionally to divide people by race and class. How are we trying to build the leadership of young people who want to be running on a platform where young people's opinions matter and where people in neighborhoods feel like they can reach out to City Hall and they could be a part of a process that meets their needs? And ultimately, if we can't afford issue 38, then how are we going to afford to give a subsidy to billionaire families who want more additions or changes made to the stadiums in 2028? And that's the big takeaway that I have for people. And I really, really want folks to know here that for 2 years, we've been trying to work with the administration and city council. And we are very lucky that the 4 women on city council and Mayor Bibbs supported legislation to pilot a people's budget. The process is called participatory budgeting. I call it a people's budget because participatory budgeting is way too many syllables, and a people's budget resonates with people. And we were really lucky that Mayor Bibb, when we were just starting up as a grassroots campaign, endorsed our campaign to say, let's do 30 million of this federal money that came from the federal government to the city to do participatory budgeting. And then it got scaled down to 5. 4 women on city council co-sponsored that, and all the men on city council said, no, we were elected to represent the people. We don't need more civic engagement. And it quickly became known to the people in our coalition and the residents who were advocating for this, that this isn't about the money, it's about the power and who has the power to determine to decide. And we only went to the polls because after 2 years, we really couldn't understand why city council didn't think that in a city where there was so much voter apathy and so much mistrust, that this wouldn't be a good thing for the young people and the residents of our city. And even after we qualified for the campaign, we went back to city council and said, hey, we don't really love that the unions are against it. What if we lowered the amount? And city council wouldn't negotiate with us, which made us feel like maybe this is about power. And the one thing that I have to say about the unions who are opposing this is that I think for a very long time, city unions have been fighting against backdoor deals and private interests with city council to get the money that they need to get the raises for their public sector employees. So anything new coming down the pipeline is going to be something that they're opposing. But I think it's really important for folks to know that participatory budgeting is a process that has been used in over 100 cities in the United States. The majority of projects that residents select are ones that get implemented by public sector employees. Currently, the city of Seattle is doing a participatory budgeting process for $30 million of their annual budget. There's a pilot being done in Los Angeles that's specifically framed around repairing institutional racism in the city by giving decision-making power of the budget to folks most institutionally harmed by redlining in that city. And if you look at the charter amendment language of issue 38, we're trying to put decision-making power in funds from the people's budget directly invested back in the neighborhoods in our city that were forcefully and intentionally disinvested from in the last 100 years. If you go to www.pbcle.com, there's a lot of information you could see about the charter amendment. We're really proud to be backed by a lot of grassroots groups in the city, including OPAL, which is an organizing group for Asian American and Pacific Islander women, NAACP Cleveland, Cleveland Votes. I work with the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. There's also a lot of civic engagement groups that are Black-led in our group that are trying to educate young people on how to get involved in their communities. And I was really honored to be invited to this space through my friend Dolores Gray, who's president of the Carl Stokes Brigade, and she's a member of our steering committee. And I think this relates to my own personal vision of building a multiracial, multi-intergenerational coalition in Cleveland that's trying to challenge power, not for the sake of power, but trying to address some of the systemic inequalities in our city. And the fact that our city has a lot of control over its budget and that we can create new ways for new people to get involved. And I think that for a long time, our city has really chosen corporate welfare for a lot of billionaires who can find private financing for their own projects when, last year, 1,700 students in CMSD were reported as homeless. And I think it's really important that we ask questions about who gets the power to make decisions and how can we create more on-ramps to democracy and how do we build more collective people power to challenge some of the decisions that our city makes financially that benefits people who are wealthy and that ends up not going back to the city. So I'm going to pause and offer my friend here some chance to respond. And I hope there are questions open in the chat because I am very happy to answer questions and to continue the conversation on issue 38. And I hope that for anyone who lives in the city of Cleveland or has family or friends that you encourage folks to vote yes on it.
All right, thank you. I make it a point not to conflate issues. And I know that we hear a lot about stadium funding. Stadium funding has nothing to do with issue 38. I want to be very loud and clear with that. we are talking about a power grab by an external group, a list of people who do not live in Cleveland, a list of people who have no connection to the city, who are trying to use $14 million pretty much as a $14 million check where we don't know where the funds are going. And that is a big problem that many of the members of council have. When I hear Molly talk about listening to people, I can tell you council listens to people. Council is doing, this is one of the most progressive councils in the history of the city of Cleveland. They've taken feedback from members, from residents to provide services that we know are going to be beneficial to them. We're talking about residents in Cleveland. We know Cleveland's one of the poorest big cities in the country. We know that residents are straddled with debt that they can't get from underneath. We know that we have a list or a number of people who are not college educated or even high school educated. Look, my mom is a high school dropout. My mom is nearly 16 years old and still does not have a GED or a high school diploma. She's one of the hardworking people who got up every day and made it a point to provide for me, my brother, my sister, so that we could go to college and we could provide a better lifestyle for our children, for her grandchildren, for her great grandchildren. So the work that I do every day is for people like my mom. And back to council, the work that they've done listening to residents in Cleveland, when I talk about that, the amounts of debt that people are buried under, using ARPA funds, they've been able to get $190 million in medical debt relief for Cleveland residents. In the past years, we introduced legislation to prevent members of unions, members of the city government, contractors, other folks from being victims of wage theft. We put a comprehensive law in place to stop folks from taking advantage of people who might not know how to read a pay stub, from folks who are not really that financially savvy. We know that they struggle every day, every week with their employers and other folks trying to take advantage of them, stealing money from them. We've put laws in place to prevent that from happening from anyone doing business with the city of Cleveland. Look, during the pandemic, we know that people really struggled to make money, to make ends meet. We had a federal mandate that prevented evictions that ended in the past year or so. City council, knowing that we had many residents who were still struggling and did not want to see them evicted, they enacted new legislation by the name of pay to stay, which really prevented a number of folks in the city from being evicted from their premises as they were looking to get a part-time job, get new jobs, get additional funding revenues that they can catch up on past due rent, catch up on current rent. This is a council that's bent over backward to provide for the needs of the city of Cleveland, to listen to constituent concerns, to listen to business concerns, and ultimately to provide a better Cleveland, not only for the residents, not only for the businesses, for the visitors, for anyone who is stepping foot in the city. We know that we have one of the highest lead poisoning rates in the city. Council President Griffin, even before becoming council president, he led the Lead Safe Cleveland initiative, which is now we're one of the most progressive cities in the country when it comes to lead remediation. We're not where we need to be. We still have so many families who are struggling with lead poisoning in their homes, but we now have laws on the books that are penalizing folks who aren't remediating and taking care of the residents, the students who attend CMSD, the students who attend our charter and private schools, so that we can prevent them from suffering from lead poisoning and increase their chances at academic success, financial success, and just being contributing members of society. Issue 38, once again, has no accountability. It takes $14 million from the city government or from the city budget for those services, like I said earlier, police, fire, EMS, road repairs, snow plowing, the services that we know Clevelanders need and rely on every day. Council is not against participatory budgeting. I will say that. They are against this charter as it's currently constructed. I know Molly mentioned compromise earlier, and that council was unwilling to compromise. And I have to say that I completely disagree with that. Council was open and willing to compromise on this with the organizers of PB up until the final deadline. We had Councilwoman Rebecca Moore, who was one of the original sponsors of this, who, again, is against this current version of issue 38 or this current version of participatory budgeting. But I know that she was one of the people, she was the person representing council trying to find a compromise to make this happen. And honestly, frankly, I believe that there is a compromise that could have happened and could still potentially happen with our community development block grant funds, which I know that by federal law, we have to have a community input session to determine how those funds are spent. Problem is, people aren't showing up to participate in those sessions. We need to do more to get folks out. And I know council and the city as a whole will do more to get people out voting on CDBG projects moving forward. Participatory budgeting across the country, as Molly mentioned, it's in Philly, it's in New York, it's in Seattle. Problem is, in those places, we're seeing participatory budgeting account for maybe 0.1 to 0.2% of the budgets of those cities. Here in Cleveland, we're looking at what, 100 or 200% of what those other cities that are much larger than us are using. A city like Philadelphia has 1.5 million people. They have $1 million that they use for participatory budgeting. Sacramento has 600,000 people. They have $2 million that they're using. Here in Cleveland, the proposed charter amendment, issue 38, is calling for $14 million to be used for this in a city with fewer than 400,000 people. So the cost per capita, and I got to apologize for the helicopter above you if you do hear that. I am outside. But the cost per capita is much greater here in Cleveland. And it's something that, frankly, council, the mayor, and again, all those unions feel that it's something that the city cannot afford currently. I have to take exception to saying that the unions in the city also are opposed to new thinking, because I believe that is, it could be farther from the truth. I know the members of the unions in the city, they work hard. So as I mentioned, my mom, a high school dropout, she's a member of a union. And I know the unions provide the lifeblood for this city, for folks to command working class wages, to take care of their families, to take care of people around them. To say that they're against any innovative changes, I disagree with that. I know that they are working hard so that they can take care of their families, increase the middle class here in the city of Cleveland, and ultimately provide the safety and services that we know Clevelanders and the folks coming into Cleveland every day, they rely on. With that, that's the reason why council is opposed to 38. It's the reason why the mayor is opposed to 38. It's the reason why AFSCME, AFL-CIO, the Cleveland Police Patrolmen's Association, the FOP, Local 93 of Cleveland Fire, and CARE with Cleveland EMS, why they are all united against this. So I thank you for the time today. I guess I asked, where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I'm gonna allow Molly to also do a brief response with final statements as well. I see that we've been answering some questions in the chat, so if we have a few quick questions, we can get to those and we'll be moving on to the next issue.
So I'm
Thank
sorry, for
you.
clarification purposes, will each person have a final statement?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, because I was thinking, I was rebutting what Molly was saying,
Yes,
so I
yes,
love the opportunity for a final statement.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah, a couple of thoughts. One is that I think what Cleveland is trying to do is bold. I think when you're a city like Cleveland, who has seen the amount of disinvestment that we've seen and seen the level of need that we need, there's nothing wrong with being on the front lines of trying to do something new and bold. And I think there's something really inspiring about being in a city where residents are trying to take the lead on inspiring that change. I think something that's been really encouraging for me and for the people, a part of People's Budget Cleveland, is that we have a lot of cities who have been doing PB for a long time, and they have a lot of lessons to learn. And we have tried to incorporate nearly all of the lessons that those cities have learned into the charter amendment, issue 38, that voters are going to be voting on November 7th. A few of those things include, how do we add more capacity so that there are actual resources for us to do a community-based election? You know, if we're trying to create more accessibility for people to participate in a process, how are we putting money, time, and resources towards that? I think sometimes I feel a little weird that people act like there's such shame around people getting paid for their time. And to me, there's nothing dirty about that. I think that I value people's time, relationships, and the wisdom and the neighborhoods that they have. And if they can be consultants really in their neighborhoods to provide the expertise and the connections and the outreach and engagement, then there's nothing wrong with paying people for that. And I think the People's Budget Charter Amendment is trying to honor that, and is trying to honor the fact that we need to be giving capacity and resources to so many grassroots groups in the city of Cleveland that have been giving so much of their heart, time, and effort to their neighborhoods to do right and to be a part of the solution in their neighborhoods, to create more love and capacity and change in their neighborhood, and to say that there's nothing wrong with adding capacity there. And frankly, a lot of cities that have done PB haven't seen a lot of turnout because they don't put a lot of money into it. They have the council person who does the process, or they do $100,000 here or there. And our thing is like, if PB is peanut butter and jelly is money, we need more jelly for the PB to make it work and to incentivize people to be like, a lot of young people and a lot of people in Cleveland know what sort of transformative changes need to happen for their lives to be better. And a lot of times those projects take a lot of money. And so part of making things worth people's time is to feel like the bang is worth their buck. So having it be for a bit more amount of money, for there to be capacity and sustainability year after year is helpful. For it to be not just about playground improvements and capital improvements to neighborhoods, but about programmatic things, about seeing how can young people be a part of the solution to violence in our communities. If we look at the root causes of trauma and looking at the root causes of the loneliness and the isolationism that people and young people are feeling, how can they be a part of that solution? It's not a matter of like council's doing a bad job, how do we do better? It's about saying council's doing what they can, things are still really fucked up, and what can we do to do better by that? This is about creating more and creating new pathways and new creativity and a political shift in people's imagination about what it means for them to participate politically, and about us building more popular power about some of the private interests that have had a stronghold over our community for a really, really long time.
Thank
And
you.
thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm sorry we have to keep going. Daryl, this will be your final statement, and we'll have one question per panelist.
All right. Again, to the members of Delta Sigma Theta and Omega Psi Phi, I'm so grateful for you allowing us to be here today to discuss this important issue with you. I am not a Cleveland City Council member, and I don't pretend to ever be one. But I know I work closely with all 17 of them, and I see intimately what's going on within the walls of City Hall and the work that is being done on behalf of Cleveland residents and for Cleveland residents. Council, the mayor, again, are united against this because this issue, as it's currently constructed, we strongly believe that it is going to take vital resources, vital funding, vital services, vital safety from Cleveland residents at a time when we need more, not less. We're looking at a crime rate that is rising. We're looking at increased murders in the city. We're looking at increased carjackings. We're looking at increased youth violence. And this issue, if passed, is going to take $14 million, the equivalent of 140 police officers off the street. That is something that we cannot afford to do at this time. I've lived in Cleveland my entire life. I have seen damaging snowstorms here. I remember just a year and a half ago when this city came to a standstill because we did not have enough drivers or the equipment that we needed to clear the streets. I don't want this city to be in a position like that again, where we're seeing RTA buses at a standstill, where people can't get around, where it's taking us a week to dig out of snow. I believe that this, and council believes that this is going to be the reality should we see issue 38 pass in November. Look, council's not making threats. Council is not trying to scare people into voting into this. A lot of the messaging that they're putting out there is the truth, it's the reality of what will happen with a successful issue 38. And again, it's the reason why all 17 members of this body, it's the reason why Mayor Bibb, it's the reason why all the unions that I mentioned earlier stand united and are asking Clevelanders to vote on issue 38. I know that early voting has started. I would ask that the members here, they share this messaging with your friends, with your family, with your fraternity brothers, with your sorority sisters. Let them know the importance of voting no on issue 30. And so with that, again, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all today.
Thank you. So now I do see a few questions in the chat. This has been a very interesting conversation. Lots of information has been shared, but we do have a question for both candidates. So the first question, I do want to also let you guys know that there have been some answers already in terms of responses to these questions in the chat. So I'm gonna try to stick to the ones that have not yet been answered. The first one being for Molly. What exactly is the People's Budget Organization looking to do with the $14 million to uplift these neighborhoods?
2 minutes, please. in 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I will honor the time. I also apologize for using the F word when I got upset. I'm just very passionate about this. Thank you for your grace. So People's Budget Cleveland is a grassroots coalition that's almost entirely volunteer led. None of issue 38's legislation would give any resources to the coalition that I'm part of. What it would do is it would require the city to create a resident led steering committee that's appointed half by city council and half by the mayor of residents of the city of Cleveland, whose job is to create a community-wide election process where they're getting ideas from residents and then creating a voting process that lasts about a month, where residents of various neighborhoods of Cleveland all together will vote on projects that get voted on, that get funded in their neighborhood using city dollars. So people who have been advocating for the people's budget will not be a part of that process. This is something that will start from scratch from City Hall, and it includes the collaboration of City Council, the mayor, and the administration to get that off the ground. Residents of Cleveland would have the opportunity to apply to serve on that committee, and then they would get appointed. And their job isn't to determine how the 14 million gets spent. Their job is to say, hey, how do I get unregistered voters? How do I get public housing residents? How do I get high school students? How do I get people who normally don't participate? How do we create a process by which we're getting ideas from them and then getting the vote out, getting the word out so that they can then say, how should this money be spent in your neighborhood? So it has nothing to do with the People's Budget Cleveland Coalition. We're merely an advocacy group that's been trying to create the systemic change to create this process, and all of the resources that would be spent on neighborhood projects would be decided on by residents themselves, and that process would be shepherded by Cleveland residents who are a part of a committee because they applied and they were appointed by members of city council and the mayor.
Thank you very much. And I don't see many other questions, but there is a question from earlier that says that this is a lot of new information for one of our guests here. How can we spread information and inform voters about this information provided tonight? And I'll let you go ahead and respond, Daryl. You should already, there you go.
Thank you. So I know we have a website dedicated to informing people about the dangers of this issue. It's keepclesafe.com. And we have a number of social media, well, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all ending with Keep CLE Safe as well. So facebook.com/Keep CLE Safe, twitter.com or x.com/Keep CLE Safe, and instagram.com/Keep CLE Safe. So we try to be consistent across the board. You look at the website, keepclesafe.com, and the social media channels, you'll be able to get additional information about it. In addition to those websites, our campaign is sending robocalls, which I know people absolutely love, text messages, and social media ads about this as well. So those are the venues that we're using to promote our viewpoint on issue 38.
Thank you both so much for being here tonight and providing all this information on this issue. I really appreciate it, and I hope that our guests today found it very informative. We do have a lot of information in the chat, so you can make sure to refer to that when you're looking at information moving forward. And we are going to move on to the next issue, that being issue 5. Thank you both so much.
Thank you again for having me here today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I just want to say before we move on that both Delta Sigma Theta and Omega Psi Phi fraternities are nonpartisan. We don't endorse any of the issues. It's incumbent upon us to provide and host educational forums like this, where we can hear from both sides of the argument. Not everyone accepted our invitation tonight. So it was kind of refreshing to have this. It wasn't a debate, but it was a civil presentation of both sides of the issue. And I want to thank you both for accepting our invitation tonight. Okay, thank you.
Now we will be moving on to issue 5, we have our panelists here to speak on the Tri-C levy.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. I want to start by thanking the Greater Cleveland Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and the Delta Zeta Omega Chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity for hosting this Power in Our Voice voter education forum. I'm Dr. Janice Marshall, and I serve as a college-wide vice president for Access and Community Connections at Cuyahoga Community College. Issue 5 is what I'm here to speak with you about. Issue 5 is all about keeping Tri-C accessible, affordable, for high quality education and training programs. And we would encourage you to vote yes on issue 5. Issue 5, again, it's about access, equity, and prosperity, really helping residents across Cuyahoga County to gain critical opportunities for education and training at the lowest tuition in the state of Ohio. Currently, our cost of tuition is $125. Without this levy passing, that cost will exceed $500. And if you think about individuals, I think about just what Daryl was talking about, his mom lacking a high school diploma. Many people aren't aware we offer GED and high school diploma training at no cost to residents across the footprint of the county. So that's even outside of the tuition that individuals pay for courses or training or certificates. When I think about issue 5, I think about it offering critical training for nurses and firefighters and police. Those first responders are critical to our families, to our community. And so issue 5, again, allows for access to that training right here in Cuyahoga County in multiple locations. Issue 5 is a 2.1 mil levy that is a renewal. And I know there were some questions in the last meeting about what exactly that meant. And so I really want to make sure tonight I have the opportunity to go into a little more detail about that. And so again, issue 5 is a 2.1 mil renewal tax levy that will cost homeowners $14 per year for every $100,000 of their home's assessed value if that measure passes. And we certainly hope we have your support to make sure it does pass. Cuyahoga Community College is the state's oldest two-year institution, and we're one of only 6 community colleges of the 23 that can put a property tax levy before voters. So we really hope that we can count on your support. When I think about Cuyahoga Community College, again, I mentioned last week that it is a place where individuals have access, whether you are 5 or 85, to high quality programming. Our dance programs, our music programs, our theater programs that are offered literally at either no cost or extremely low cost for individuals. It's where high school students have the opportunity to begin gaining and earning college credit at no cost to them or their families. Issue 5, again, is where futures begin. When I think about 85% of our graduates remain right here in Cuyahoga County, that is an economic impact to this region like none other. For every $11, or for every $1 that is spent, $11.80 is returned back to this community. Let me give you some other just brief statistics about Cuyahoga Community College. 75% of our students are enrolled part-time, where they are managing their families, they're working, they're going to school, again, for access, equity, and improved prosperity for themselves and their families. 26% of our students take evening or weekend classes. 88% are seeking an associate degree in an in-demand, high-quality area that allows them to transfer to a four-year university or allows them to gain employment immediately upon completing either those certificates or degrees. 28% of our students are focused in the healthcare area. We know how critically important this is in Northeast Ohio. 63% are enrolled in a technical job training program. 13% are enrolled in business. But when I think about what Issue 5 really means to families in this community, it's really about meeting the needs of families right where they are. This issue, again, keeps the tuition affordable to anyone who needs it, whether you are starting out in your career, you're upskilling, you're re-careering, you're reskilling. Cuyahoga Community College is where futures begin again. We want to make sure that the number of programs have access to high quality equipment that is necessary for training that keeps individuals up to date. And this, again, Issue 5 is critical for that reason. It allows us to hire and retain talented faculty and staff members who can meet students where they are at the beginning for access, for retention, for completion of those certificates and degrees. Again, many of our graduates remain right here in Northeast Ohio, but it allows them to gain entree into careers, again, in healthcare, advanced manufacturing, business, information technology, public safety, and many other good paying, family sustaining, or higher wages. We want to deliver important innovations and keep up to date. And again, I mentioned in last week's meeting for many who were there, the first 2 years are your first 2 years, whether you start at Cuyahoga Community College, Cleveland State University, Baldwin Wallace, The Ohio State. 2 years are your first 2 years. So pay $40,000 or pay a tuition of $125. And the choice, again, is before voters to keep tuition affordable and accessible. We know many individuals go off to a four-year college, but they return to this Cleveland or Cuyahoga County area, and they have the opportunity to either continue their education, finish, and return to those four-year universities if that is the case. Again, we talk about many individuals are coming back to Cuyahoga Community College to upgrade their skills to continue advancing in their current roles within organizations across, again, the footprint of Northeast Ohio. We know we all live in a challenging time in our country, in our world, in our county. We want to make sure we can continue to move forward by addressing the economic, social, and educational issues head on. And we know that with a quality education that is accessible and affordable, it allows us to combat many of those real problems that individuals are dealing with every single day. Let me pause and see if there are any questions.
Thank you so much. Very well said. There is a question. It says, is there any organized opposition to issue 5? If so, what is that opposition based upon? Does a positive, oh, well, I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah, we are not aware of any opposition to issue 5 at this point in time. We are constantly polling and surveying likely voters on this issue. We have endorsements from just about every city across the county. Lots of other leaders have successfully supported and are endorsing this issue. I can provide you with a list of those endorsements if you like. I do see this question that talks about Tri-C has program for citizens that can audit. Absolutely, we have program 60 and we have our Encore program. There are hundreds of low cost or at no cost programs, again, for everyone you can imagine in your family. I think about Tri-C as a multi-generational educational institution because we serve individuals from 5 to 85, actually older than that. I hosted a program a few years ago where our oldest participant celebrated her 100th birthday during that program, supporting her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren. So we do have programs literally for everyone in the family.
That's amazing. So the second part of the first question was, does a positive vote on the renewal mean that taxpayers will agree to continue to pay a tax that is already in place?
That it does, and it's an additional 14 years, $14 per year if this levy renewal pass.
Okay. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions? I'll allow you a minute to put them in the chat if you're typing something up.
Thank you, Councilwoman Turner, for putting that in the chat.
Yeah, for those of you who might not have seen it, Councilwoman Turner just put in a link to a Facebook page that'll have more information on voting for issue 5, the Tri-C levy.
And I think I sent you a link that's to the Citizens for Cuyahoga Community College.
Yes, I will also.
And if anyone is interested in yard signs or volunteering or need additional literature, you can contact me directly for that information, or you can go to the Citizens for Cuyahoga Community College and request that information. I appreciate that, Carmen, not a question, but 100% support. And so we really, again, want to encourage you to share this issue with your friends, your family, your neighbors, your colleagues, to vote yes on issue 5 to keep Tri-C where futures begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions in the chat. That was very informative. We really appreciate you being here today. Once again, like Councilwoman Turner said earlier, Delta Sigma Theta and Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated are nonpartisan organizations. We sent the invite to both sides of this issue. Dr. Janice was able to make it tonight, and this is the information we are providing you moving forward. Thank you so much for being here, and we will move on to the next section.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Look at that. But okay, we're gonna get started on the next section. We will be discussing issue 1 on reproductive rights, and we have Kelly Copeland here to discuss.
Hello. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here with you tonight. I really appreciate the Greater Cleveland Alumna Chapter of the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and the Great Zeta Omega Chapter, Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, and Councilwoman Meredith Turner for inviting me to speak to you about the proposed amendment to Ohio's Constitution that would protect our right to abortion and to make our own healthcare decisions. And I'm here to talk to you about why it is so critical to vote yes in November. And the stakes really couldn't be higher. And I think the best way for me to really talk about what's at stake is to talk about what happened last year. As many of you know, last year, the US Supreme Court struck down nearly 50 years of precedent when they struck down Roe versus Wade. That happened in June of 2022. Before the sun set that day, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and Attorney General Dave Yost rushed into federal court and asked that the 6-week ban that they had signed into law in 2019, they asked that that be allowed to go into effect. It had been blocked by a federal court under the precedence of Roe versus Wade. And what happened was not political. Why it happened was political, but what happened was not political. My office is across the street from the Delta's office on Shaker Boulevard. My office is in an abortion clinic called Preterm. For those of you in the Cleveland area, you'll if you drive up and down Shaker, you know exactly where it is because you see the protesters screaming at medical professionals and patients. And what happened in that clinic and clinics across the state was patients who had appointments the next day had to be called, and they had to be told that their doctors couldn't help them, that because most of them were beyond approximately 6 weeks in pregnancy, and that if they were going to get the care that they needed, they would have to flee the state. That even with support from some organizations that I partner with, abortion funds, abortion clinics that tried to help with financing and logistics, many people were not able to escape, and they were forced to continue pregnancies against their will, and sometimes in direct threat to their lives and their health. During that 82 days that ban was in effect, people were scared. They were scared to be pregnant in Ohio. They were afraid, and rightfully so, that they might not be able to get the care they need if they had a pregnancy complication. There were wide reports of patients who needed miscarriage management, who were not able to get that care, who were sent away from emergency rooms, bleeding severely, only to have to come back later. And it was because hospitals and institutions were afraid. They were afraid they would be criminalized. They were afraid they would lose their medical license. We even had, people who had been victims of rape or incest, who could not get care because the extreme abortion ban, the 6-week ban, it bans abortion at a point in pregnancy where many people don't realize they're pregnant yet. And it also does not have exceptions for rape or incest, or adequate exceptions to protect the life of the patient. It requires that a patient gets so sick that they could die before a doctor can help them. And for anyone who has faced a serious health condition like sepsis, which I have, those healthcare decisions aren't like a traffic light where, it goes, green, yellow, red, and you know exactly where you are in that process. That's not how pregnancy works. That's not how healthcare works. And it was extremely frightening for people during those 82 days. We were fortunate that we were able to get a judge, a county common pleas judge in Hamilton County, who agreed with our attorneys who filed to get another stay on that 6-week ban, to say that actually the Ohio Constitution protects that right. And, implicitly, One of the reasons is because the Ohio Constitution already says that you cannot prohibit the sale or purchase of healthcare, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. As you know, abortion clinics are regulated by the Ohio Department of Health, so clearly it is healthcare. However, last year, the Ohio Supreme Court was overtaken by judges who were elected who have pre-decided this case. They have completed candidate questionnaires where they have said, no, I don't agree that there is a basic human right to bodily autonomy. No, I don't believe that abortion is protected under the state constitution. And that's when organizations like mine, Pro-Choice Ohio, and others like New Voices for Reproductive Justice, the Ohio Women's Alliance, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, and Your Neighbors Preterm realized, and the Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, that's when we realized that we really just had no choice but to try to get an amendment to the state constitution that didn't implicitly, but explicitly protected that access to reproductive health care. So we worked together on language, and we were able to get over 700,000 Ohioans to sign that petition to get that on the ballot, which was incredible because I think a lot of people felt so helpless last year. And when all of that happened, they were like, well, what can I do? And, you know, I think the thing is now there is something that people can do. They can turn out and vote yes on issue 1. And we can make sure that we don't go back to what it was like during those 82 days last year. And I think the fundamental issue at play here is about who decides. Because if we do not pass issue 1, the 6-week ban will go back into effect. And I think it is extremely likely that the gerrymandered legislature will pass a total ban on abortion. None of the bans, the incremental bans that they've passed over the years, have included exceptions for rape or incest or for the health of the patient. And I don't believe that they would include those exceptions now. They never have. They have heard testimony about why access to abortion and other reproductive health care, like contraception, like fertility, infertility treatments, you know, being able to continue your pregnancy, why all of those things are important. And yet they've spent the last 15 years closing abortion clinics for no medical reason, defunding family planning services, supporting abstinence only sex education, which leaves people without the information that they need. And so this issue is really about who decides. If issue 1 passes, it will mean that you decide. You get to make those decisions. If issue 1 fails, it means that the government will decide. And we will have a total ban on abortion without exceptions. And we will be stuck with that. And so, I want to kind of wrap up so we can take questions because I assume there will be many questions. But I just kind of wanted to end on my family's personal story, which is why this is important. My great-grandmother had 21 children who lived. They lived in abject poverty. She obviously didn't have access to contraceptives. That wasn't a thing at the time. My grandmother had an illegal abortion because she had a pregnancy that endangered her life. And she did not get that from a physician. My mom was a victim of incest. And we know that when you don't have control over your reproduction, over when and how you create and expand your family, you really don't have control over anything else about the well-being in your life, to be able to take care of yourself and your family. This is a foundational, fundamental human right. This is a basic dignity. And I believe it's a decision that you should make for yourself and that the government should never be allowed to make for you. And that's why I'm asking you, imploring you, to vote yes on issue 1 before November 7th. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions people may have.
Thank you so much for that information and for sharing your story in regards to this issue. We do have a few questions in the chat. The first one being, can you speak on how issue 1 addresses the effect on people's desire for IVF and birth control? I've heard that these issues are connected, but not sure how.
Yes, thank you for that question. We included in the ballot language, which you can read if you go to readtheamendment.com, you can actually read the amendment language. And when we crafted that, we wanted to obviously protect access to abortion, but also contraception and fertility treatments. And that could include IVF, right? But those aren't the only fertility treatments, as well as miscarriage management and to be able to continue your pregnancy. We wanted to protect that full spectrum of reproductive health care because we think that those decisions should be made by individuals and not by the government. And so, and we have seen efforts to limit access to contraception, to limit access to other kinds of reproductive health care. And so we knew we were only going to get one shot at this. These ballot initiatives are very, very difficult. Getting 700,000 signatures from half the counties and all of that, and then making it through the August special election, which we haven't even talked about, that was, put in our way. These are significant hurdles, and we wanted to get it just right because we know how much it matters to people.
Thank you so much. We also have another question that says, how can we minimize the confusion of voting yes on issue 1 versus previously having to vote no on issue 1 just a few weeks ago? This is becoming
Yes.
a barrier.
Well, and that's a very savvy question, Carmen, because as I mentioned, our opponents are so desperate to stop this because I have to be honest with you, they want to rule us. They don't want to represent us. If you look what they've done with gerrymandering, if you look what they've done to the state Supreme Court, if you look at so many of the things they've done with voter suppression, this is part of a larger agenda to prevent people from being able to make their own decisions, whether it's in government or for themselves. And so part of what they try to do to prevent us from being able to have an honest conversation with the state of Ohio, with the people of Ohio, to be able to have their say on issue 1 is they created another issue 1. It was on the ballot in August, and it would have raised the threshold to pass a constitutional amendment. Not just the voting, but also the threshold to actually get something on the ballot. And that was also called issue 1. So there is a lot of confusion out there. Our opponents, frankly, have tried to stoke that confusion by creating yard signs that were very similar to the ones that we used in August. So that's why it's really important that we let people know this time we're voting yes on issue 1. And I know that's frustrating, but I don't think I have to explain to this audience that is what it's like to be up against the full force of the state government when it is dominated by people who do not represent the people. And, they have leveraged their power every step of the way. When you go to vote on issue 1, you will not see the amendment itself. You will see a summary that is longer than the amendment, one that was written by Frank LaRose that is biased, that is not factually accurate, and that's by design. They're doing everything they can to leverage government and their authority to be able to prevent Ohioans from passing this issue 1 to protect their own basic human rights, their own being able to make their own decisions for themselves and their families. And so thank you for asking about that it's really important that everyone understand that we're voting yes this time. I kind of joked before that we should have ran a no yeah campaign, no in August and yes in November, but I got voted down. So here we are.
Yes, that is definitely been something that we've been noticing as like a big turnaround, but you do what you can.
Right.
This is all good information to have. We have one final question. And that is, I've heard that there are some parts of this issue that also covered access to private health records by government agencies, including abortions. Is this part of this as well?
That's the first time I've heard that, so no. That is not part of what issue one, what this constitutional amendment is designed to do or would do. You know, one of the reasons why issue one is important is that, you know, in some states where they have criminalized abortion, where they've banned abortion, there have been moves to try to access medical records. And I think that is tied to trying to intimidate people, but also it's a step towards criminalizing people, bringing people up on charges for their pregnancy outcomes, for their decisions. And it's frankly one of the reasons why last year, during those 82 days, we had a team of criminal defense attorneys who were prepared to defend any patients who may have, you know, tried to safely self-manage their own abortion, and, you know, would be investigated by the authorities for that. So actually, I feel like if we pass issue one, that's an important step to prevent people from being criminalized for their pregnancy outcomes, and to protect health records, which are protected under HIPAA. But if, you know, if, you know, abortion or other things were be considered criminalized, you know, that is somewhere that opponents of abortion and people who want to make those decisions could try to take it.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. That was very well said. We really appreciate the information that you've provided. I'm going to keep saying this because, once again, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated are nonpartisan organizations. This panel tonight, we invited representatives to speak on both sides of issue one, and this is the information that we are providing you with moving forward for the general election coming up next month. So once again, thank you so much, Kelly, for being here. And we are going to move to the next section. There have been some answers and resources provided in the chat, as well as links to different websites that Kelly spoke about during this conversation for you to review on your own time. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. I so appreciate the opportunity.
Now we are going to move to issue two. I am going to get everyone queued up. Oh, this is so much easier. You guys are right at the top today. 1 second. One last participant that I need to pull up. Okay, so we have 3 people here to speak on issue 2, which is the legalization of marijuana in Ohio. I want everyone to be able to speak and give their stances. We are in the last 30 minutes of this section, so I want you all to be aware of that moving forward, and I want everyone to be able to say their stance and have some time for questions. So we can go ahead and get started with Allie.
Thank you so much. First, I want to just say thank you to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for getting me here today. I've been excited to do this, and shout out to State Rep Juanita Brent, and also to Council City Meredith Turner for inviting me to this platform to use my voice. My name is Allie Reeves. I'm the owner and CEO of Midwest Canna Women, which is a small business I created back in October 2017, right after I had started working in the cannabis industry here in the state of Ohio. I'm born and raised from Cleveland, and I've been blessed enough to work in and work outside with my business with the Ohio licensed operators here in the state of Ohio, just doing different things in the community to really diversify the industry, if you might say. I used to be a coach in Cleveland. I worked at a rec center, so I really just transferred my skill sets into cannabis and just use my voice to advocate for people to have the choice to use healthier and safer medication. If you don't know, medical cannabis is legal as of September 8th, 2016. And right now, issue 2 is on the ballot, which is regulate alcohol like marijuana. Regulate marijuana like alcohol's issue 2 adult use bill, saying that we want the state of Ohio to have adult use, which is recreational use. To some of you that may know, we want to be free to do as we may. But I'm going to pause right there because I want to bring on a very special guest. If you can Google how many minorities own a actual cannabis license in the cannabis industry, it's less than 1%. And I have had the pleasure to have a friend, a business partner, and also the executive board advisor to Midwest Can of Women. And that is my friend up there, Nicole Ross. She is a licensed operator here in the state of Ohio. Remember what I said, it's less than 1%. So I want to allow her this platform so she can actually educate you on why you should vote yes to issue 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ali, for the invitation. And thank you so much to the women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated Greater Cleveland Chapter, Alumni Chapter, and also to the beautiful and amazing men of Zeta Omega Chapter of Omega Psi Phi. It's a privilege being here. I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, fall 2006 of the Collegiate Chapter of Zeta Chapter of University of Cincinnati. So it's such an honor to be able to speak with you all today about this issue. And thank you, Ali, for the invitation to allow me to be able to speak on this topic. As we mentioned before, we're talking about issue 2, and issue 2 is about the legalization of our current medical program. My name is Nicole Ross, and I'm the owner and COO of Neura Labs, a medical marijuana processing license located in Dayton, Ohio. We're one of few minorities that are here in the program. We're Ohio owned, we're minority owned, we're women owned, and we're also family owned. My father is our CEO. My mother is our outreach director. She's also an RN. My sister is our operations director. And then I also have another sister who's our qualities manager. And we're here to be able to talk about the legalization of the cannabis program. But first, we're here to educate about what this program actually really means and what this expansion will look like when issue 2 is passed in November. The medical program to the adult division is going to change a few things on the ballot. It's going to change and allow the current program to expand into a more inclusive program with conditions, meaning that there won't be a restriction of any type of condition that is currently placed for the current medical program. So right now, we currently have about 180,000 patients who are currently registered in the program over the last 4 years. So the goal is to be able to allow for people not to have recommendations to be able to use their license, be 21 year over, to be able to have a qualifying opportunity to be able to participate in the adult use program. Also, it's going to change some of the potencies. It's going to allow for any operators like myself who currently operates an operating license to process medical marijuana to be grandfathered in because we've been compliant since August of 2021. So that allows for us to be able to have the opportunity to be able to create compliant and safe medical marijuana for the adult use program. However, it allows for benefits of additional licenses for certain conglomerates and eliminates a select few of operators that are Ohio owned and minority owned. So we're voting yes on issue 2, but we're wanting to focus on the languaging and making sure that once this program is in effect, that it's going to have an inclusive program and a quality program for current operators and for future operators that want to participate in this program. My stance is growth first and inclusion of growth. And making sure that all operators have the opportunity to provide quality medicine that is safe and regulated for the program. But first, it's about understanding what the program is to Ohio. Ohio passed, as Ali said, in 2016 for the program 3796 that allows for level 1 operators, which allows for you to grow cannabis, and level 2 operators to grow cannabis to a certain amount of square footage. It allowed for us to be able to take that same plant medicine and make extracted oils that allows for us to take that oils and make it into medicines for different patients in different product forms that are vape pens and different type of edibles and things like that, or tinctures or topicals that people may use in the current program patients. It also allows for retail sales in the program. So right now we currently have about 100 stores. Right now we're in about 30 stores of that 100. So it's a very different and a challenging moment because sometimes with the expansion of the program with the limited amount of patients, it is a challenge for operators to be able to supply quality because it's a supply chain thing. We have to understand supply and demand. And one of the things that operators like myself who in the program, if there's 200 licenses, there's probably about 5 that are minority owned in the actual program. In Ohio owned, probably about 4. So we're talking about 12 licenses that are actually Ohio owned that are independent. And it also allows for multi-state operators to receive additional licenses for their vertical grow. So vertical means that they are allowed to do all 3 operating types, from growing the medicine to extracting the medicine to also dispensing it. Issue 2 is a great opportunity for us to be able to expand because we want to be able to allow for all people to be able to have the access and to be able to talk about the importance of our greater number and larger number. But first, we have to talk about making sure that it's inclusive in the languaging that we incorporate in this bill. Because there is some inclusion and exclusion in the program, meaning that we want to make sure that there's no way that the languaging and the wordings and the rules will carve out any current operators that are currently operating in the program, like any minority operators like myself who own a processing license, to be able to have the opportunity to grow retail and to be able to grow and dispense products, because vertical own is being able to have a destiny of your own supply chain. So you're not contingent in needing one or the other to be able to have a compliant license. Also, too, to make sure that there's an equity program that's sustainable, because there's a lot of programs throughout the country that has not been successful. And there was a program that was supposed to be equity in Ohio back in 2016 that was carved out, saying it was unconstitutional to have a set aside based on race. So first, we want to be able to make sure that issue 2 is allowing for us to be able to vote in the adult use program, but also make sure that it's incorporation and inclusion and equality for everybody to participate in an expansion of this current program. So I'm going to leave it there. I know there's a lot of things that we can talk about, but I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak if they have any questions.
Thank you. Now I'm going to move to Marsha Pledger.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Soros. Thank you, Meredith, for the invitation. Thank you, Delta Sigma Theta Alumni Chapter, for hosting this. Thank you, Omega Psi-Phi. And thank you to Allie and Nicole for doing such a good job already. So I don't say much, but basically I'm a journalist. Let me start with that. So it's kind of weird for me to say I'm on one side or the other with anything, because that's how journalists think. There's always 2 to 3 sides to every story. But the fact is, I put on a cannabis conference with my partner, and it's called the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit. We just had our event October 6th and 7th at the IX Center, and we had a couple thousand people and 75 speakers, 100 exhibitors. So I'm absolutely an ancillary business in the cannabis space. That being said, I can't even vote on issue 2 because I just, after 25 years in Cleveland, I moved to Florida 2 years ago. But that being said, I'm absolutely in favor of, please vote yes, please, on issue 2. So you guys have done such a great job already. I'm trying to think of what needs to be covered, but basically what I want to say is that you have to be educated. So the reason we do this conference is just to educate yourself, on what it's all about. So whether it's medical, or this is obviously issue 2 is, was prepared by the Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol. And, the proposed law models 23 other states that have already done this, to create a system that's going to regulate and tax marijuana just like alcohol. But it's going to generate new tax revenues, like 10%, in terms of existing state and county sales taxes. It's going to, one thing I want to read though is the current marijuana law. The bottom line is it ruins a lot of lives. When right now, our current marijuana law ruins a lot of lives. Still against the law. Federally, it's legal in 41 states. 23 recreation, 40 of those 41 states, 23 are recreational. We could be the 24th, and I hope that's the case. But this measure would end unfairly harsh punishments for minor marijuana offenses, freeing local law enforcement to do other stuff. That's one thing. And also, yeah, it's going to expand the use of the medical use program. It's for many seriously ill people, including veterans and people with PTSD and cancer patients. And marijuana is the only medicine that, can helps a lot of people. So often marijuana, it's the only medicine that relieves a lot of pain and suffering. So, but everybody doesn't, like Nicole mentioned, everybody doesn't have enough medical marijuana cards, and so this would regulate, and that, I just want to say that, and we can open up to more questions. And I'm just really grateful that you guys both mentioned social equity, because I'm on that all day. It's sad that now that it's time to make money in this industry, that people of color are locked up. That's people, Black and brown people, are all in jail. But they both said it well. How many people are in this industry now? That it's illegal. It's heartbreaking. So that's one thing I want to say. And I just hope that it's voted yes on issue 2.
And can I add to that? Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay. So as both Allie and Ms. Pleasures have said, it is important that, this issue does pass. But the imperative part of all of it is, as we talked about, is the education. We've been on doing certain things to different relationships with the legislators to incorporate diversity and inclusion. Allie and I, as mentioned before, have done different things of statewide expungement clinics to be able to incorporate those measures into the program, working with different community partners in those efforts, because you're a state employee and you can't have any type of record or charges to be able to participate in the program. So the equity program is something that has to be incorporated for the future. But currently, right now, there's not an equity program because it was deemed unconstitutional back when we first applied. But since we had to measure up, now it's important for us to include ourselves into the languaging, because now it's about who's at the table with the pen. Who's being able to make those decisions of how expansion is going to take place. And we got to make sure that our voice is heard in the room so we can carve out the right resources to ensure that future licensing, future quality, future education, future careers, future ownership is sustainable and effective for the future of the program, and also the division that's going to be taking place in the future. So issue 2 is very important for the growth. But first, we got to stand strong and make sure that we're buying minority-owned products. We have, if you're not a patient in the program, get your card. Don't buy illicit medicine that's in the program, that's not in the program, that's in the Black market. Go get a card, get your products tested, or get a product that is tested so you know what you're receiving. Making sure that you educate people about the changing semantics to science, because we're in a medical field where we have different operators who are biochemists and different marketing, legal advocates like Allie and also Ms. Pleasure. So these are things that we want to be able to create as community partnerships. But it first takes us to be able to know what we're reading and what we're reading to incorporate ourselves, and making sure that people who are not like us or look like us are excluding us out of product based off of capital barriers and entry.
That's real.
Thank you all so much. We do have quite a few questions in the chat, unless anyone wanted to say like a final statement before we continue to that. Okay. Okay, so how does issue 2 impact the private work sector?
The private work sector?
That's what that means.
I can ask for clarification.
I'm
If
not
you
sure what that means.
see that question, we can get some clarification moving forward. But I can move to the next one before we get to that. Are your reasons equity for entry into the system or easy access to product?
Are you saying, are there reasons for equity?
I think they're asking what the goal is for passing issue 1 or issue 2.
I believe it's both. You know, we want to make the products affordable, but it's also about making sure that the supply chain is congruent. You have to have access to entry because minorities and Ohio-owned and women-owned, veteran-owned companies are being highly eliminated from just capital barriers and being able to know how to have a compliant license in a very competitive market. So both things are necessary so we can be able to have a sustainable operating system that allows to create quality medicine, but don't jeopardize um, the affordability for patients and future consumers of medicine in the cannabis program. So issue 2 is important because it will diversify more licenses, but we need to make sure equality is included for current operators who've invested, did impact and engagement, such as, you know, diversity and inclusion, making sure that all operators have the opportunity to produce at that level of quality. So it's not a barrier for only multi-state operators or operators that have a capital infrastructure, but those who are Ohio-owned and independent-owned, but then also to creating a program that allows for the future steps and pathways to be effective and resourceful, so nobody has to create the same barriers and wheels that we already had to overcome. You know, now it's about making sure that the things are in place to be able to succeed. But first, it comes down to this languaging. It's going to be important right after the law that we make sure that statute doesn't eliminate certain things that is important for all the reasons why we're voting today. That's why we did with Midwest County Women a voters registration last year and also this year to ensure that voters registration was important for this election, because issue 2 is important for all of us, but it's also important for equality for the operators and the patients as well.
Thank you. Allie, did you want to say something?
I want to, if you could just go through the question. I've seen somebody else ask the question. I just wanted to be able to answer all the questions before we end it. That's all.
Yeah. So thank you. The next question would be, what does inclusion look like? Would it cover educational programs for folks that are interested in pursuing the cannabis industry? There's a little more to that question. The asker says that as someone that works with youth, as they identify their post-secondary plans, I have seen an increase in scholars' interest to pursue careers in this industry. However, I don't see many options or feasible pathways.
I would like to answer that. First, I'm gonna drop my info in the chat because I'm very passionate about helping people become included in the industry. I do think there are a lot of pathways as far as education. I started at the Cleveland School of Cannabis back in May 2017 as the admissions officer. So that is definitely one school that has grants that you can apply for. They have a minority grant that you can apply for, and it'll take some off your tuition, even though there's right now, they're up for regional accreditation. So there's still no like federal funding for it, but they do have private lenders and ways that you can actually apply and make it affordable to go to school. Also, there's a lot of universities around the United States. One that I'm thinking of right now, I just spoke to an instructor from Morehouse. So like, schools like Morehouse, there are schools in Ohio, like Hopkins College, that have other cannabis education programs that you can enroll into. And then like with the Cleveland School of Cannabis, they have a career department. So they get you all the way through your education. Then they also help you find employment. They help you with your resumes and stuff like that. And then they work with outside organizations like myself if somebody needs the record expunged or anything like that. And then further to help gain employment. So there's a lot of ways, and I'm gonna drop my info in the chat. So if you want to talk to me directly on a one-on-one, I could definitely do that, and I don't charge. It's all free game. Thank you.
I just want to add one thing to Allie. We had actually added a panel last at our event, October 6th and 7th, on universities and colleges and universities. And we had colleges, like five or six colleges for all over across the country on that panel. And it's not easy because it's still against the law federally, but you know, so we also had 2 booths. We had Morehouse School of Medicine was a participant. My father graduated there. Central State, my mom graduated from there. You know, Central State also had a booth. They were part of it. They brought more than a dozen students to our event because there needs to be more education. And like we all keep saying, there's a lot of opportunities despite the many challenges, but people of color are being left out. And so it was important for us to add a panel just on educating on universities and colleges.
Yes, but there's a lot of opportunities. I swear, I talk to people all the time. I go to a lot of different events across the United States, and I talk to people all the time. There's so many ways that you can get affordable education. Like I said, just hit me up and I can give you the game for free.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for that. I did want to go back to the first question I asked briefly because there was some clarification. So the first question again was, sorry, scrolling. How does issue 2 impact the private work sector? Meaning, when we speak of issue 2, how does it affect sustainability in the cannabis space?
That's a good question.
And we can make this really brief because we got 8 minutes before we end.
Oh, my boss lady is Nicole. You want to take that since you're employing? She on mute. She on mute.
Okay. Now repeat your question one more time. I was trying to unmute it and get out the chat. My apologies.
So it seems like she said that the question has been answered, but if you guys had any final statements on this issue before we wrap up, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. I believe in, justice for us all to be able to have generational wealth and equality in this program. There's enough room for us all to shine and us all to be able to have an opportunity to participate in this economic growth that is being created in the cannabis industry, but also here in Ohio. First things first is understanding through education, understanding the rules, understanding the laws so we can protect ourselves and make sure that we understand who we should work with and work towards inclusion and diversity for this industry that has impacted us in our communities due to the war on drugs. But also it's a change, it's a change agent, so we want to be able to create the change. I don't want to say yes or no, but I want to say yes towards growth and inclusion so we can make sure that all of us have the opportunity to participate in this program, but also get quality medicine that serves the patient's needs. So if you ever have any questions about who we are, like I said, Neuro Labs, and we're in several dispensaries across the state of Ohio. But also, too, we are looking towards expansion and growth as the program expands, but we want to make sure the languaging is correct and right for now and the future. So thank you.
Well, I just want to say I agree with everything that Coach has said, but education is everything. You just have to educate yourself, and there's a lot of information out there. We are one of those many vehicles. Our event is the Ohio Cannabis Health and Business Summit, ochbs.com. I can also be reached. I can just put it in the chat, I guess. I'll put in the chat how to reach me personally, but I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm just grateful for this opportunity. Miss Allie.
I just wanted to say, like I said, thank you, Meredith. I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for allowing us to come on here and talk about, cannabis late at night. If you need your card, a discount, I got card patient visits for $65. Hit me up. If you're trying to get your record expunged, I can help you do that. Free game. Trying to just help people get their life together so we can, definitely feel a part of this industry that's growing and making a lot of money. And like I said, once we vote yes on November 7th, it'll be way more opportunities than it is now. So thank y'all so much and stay medicated.
Thank you all so much for this information on issue 2. We really appreciate you being here tonight. We had some great questions and great answers. And that is going to be the conclusion of our program. I'm going to turn it over to my chair, Meredith Turner, with closing remarks.
All right. Thank you, Miss Allie. And you know what? It was so nice to have sorors on tonight who were subject area experts. I didn't know. Pleasure to meet you, Sora Nicole. Okay, let's keep in touch. And thank you, Marcia. So I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. I know many of you were also at the in-person event where we heard from some of the candidates. But again, it was a pleasure to, have the community join us tonight. Again, I want to thank all the SOARs from the Social Action Committee that joined tonight. I see you. Thank you so much for your presence. I want to thank our president, Melanie Frazier. I know she was doing double duty as well. So I want to thank her and other members of the executive board, executive committee who participated. As always, our outstanding brothers of the great. I noticed y'all got some new branding going on. The Great Zeta Omega chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, in which I am Citizen of the Year. Actually, I think I'm Citizen of the Year Emeritus. I just gave myself my own title, but it's always a pleasure to partner with you all. I want to thank my co-chairs. I want to thank technology and publicity for all of their support of our programs. I just want to remind you that early voting has started. The times are weird. During the weekdays, I believe it's from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. On that last Saturday, November 4th, voting is from 8 o'clock to 4 p.m. We'll be at the Board of Elections on Sunday, November 5th from 1. We'll be there from 1 to 3 p.m. Voting is from 1 to 5. But the Divine Nine, NAACP, National Congress of Black Women, we're still confirming partners. Some of our church affiliates will be joining us for Souls to the Polls for 1 to 3 o'clock on Sunday, November 5th. It is free. It's open to the public. So come down and join us. Vote with us if you haven't already done so. And that is it. The survey is in the chat, so please make sure that you complete that before you leave so we can get your thoughts on whether or not we're doing a good job. So that's all I got. Aaliyah or Davina, do you have anything? Okay.
No, just want to say thanks to everyone for attending. That's all.
All right.
Go out and vote. We spent a
Yes.
lot of time on this. That's a lot of good information you all learned tonight. So tell your friends and go.
Absolutely. Allie said stay medicated, but I'm not endorsing that. We don't endorse. We're nonpartisan. We don't
Nonpartisan.
do that. We don't do that on here. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Judge Adrian. It was good to see you. Fuss. Love y'all. Until next time.
All
Stay
right.
Black.
Bye.
All right.